Hello and welcome to Delegating Effectively. My name's David Betts, business coach based in Colchester, and really the reason for this today's topic is if there's one thing which always catches people as a curveball in running a business is delegating to their team. And it shows up in all different ways. The most obvious one is, why won't my team use their initiative and just make their own decisions? And most cases, it's because they haven't told the team member that they've got permission to make the decision in the first place. So there's lots of mindset things, and I'll give you a few stories on the way through of experience of business owners actually just hitting this wall because of what they've been pre-programmed in their mind, generally through upbringing. And so we're going to kick off with the presentation, and we'll skip between presentation. I'll do a few presentations on the board to take us through it. So delegation within business. Let's switch to the presentation and we'll take it from there. So, delegating. Getting other people to do things for you. The underlying problem is we start with the premise that we've been in the business longest, we've got the most experience, and hence we'll be able to do something that much better than anybody else, which is quite possibly true. And the reason it's true is if nobody else has been given the opportunity to actually do it, then there's every chance that they won't be as good as you because they haven't had the training and the experience that you've built up over the time of doing it. So let's see how we get there and what actually gets us into that position in the first place. So we're on a journey. We start our business and we've had some form of entrepreneurial seizure is generally the way we get there. Something's happened, we've been made redundant. Oh, I can do a better job than my old boss. I'll go and start my own business. So off you go. And you start making your widgets or you're producing your furniture or whatever it is that you're doing, and it starts to sell. And everything's great. And this is why you went into this, because you were going to show everybody how you could do better. So your product's good. You've thought of plenty of time to think about how to get it to where you were in the market. You knew people who were going to buy it. So the next thing that happens is that the workload grows because people want to buy your product, people queuing up to buy it, you have to produce it. And you get a bit stretched. And you work a few extra hours and you push things a bit harder. But the underlying thing is, because you're rushed, what actually happens is you become less efficient. Not huge amounts, but less efficient. And when you're at that sort of point, is usually the point where you think, I've got to take on team members. I've got to get some help because of all these different things that need to be done. So this is really where you make that first step into running a business rather than working as a sole trader, whether or not you're a limited company or your company status. But you start to have to manage people. So if we look at that side of things, let's have a quick exercise. One of the great measures I've found over all the years of coaching is actually who's working hardest in the business. So this is a good question as a leveler. How many hours are you working on average each week? Just an approximate, what sort of time you get to the office or the workshop or whatever, and what sort of time you leave. Multiply that by the number of days that you work, plus any extra hours that you tend to work at home in the evenings, doing the paperwork, etc., and come up with a number. Once you've got that number, divide the money you take out of the business by that number and come up with an hourly rate. Quick exercise, 2 minutes. Now, the real question there is, if you're the owner, it's your business, you've worked out an hourly rate. Are you the best paid person in your business? Because if you're not, you have to start asking yourself why. Something is not right if you're the key person in that business and you're paying other people more money than you. And we can come up with reasons of, oh, well, we're going to sell the business in a few years for loads and loads of money, and that's where I make money. You can come up with all these excuses, which may very well prove to be true, but if you're not paying your way on the way there, why are you doing it? So that's the first real question. And it's difficult to see why you get into this position. So let me give you an overview, and I'll show you the full slide in a minute. But you have your entrepreneurial seizure. You start your business, so you are the owner. And clearly, you have to have customers. So your customers are part of the equation. And obviously, you as the owner deal with the customers. But obviously, you also have to manage the business, all the legal aspects of running a business. And as the workload grows, what you then do is you add a team to help you. Now, that seems great, doesn't it? So now let's look at the workload. You, as the owner, are looking after the customer. And you also were doing your paperwork, your accounts, your invoicing, all the regular routine stuff that you have to do. And then you realise you're in overload. So you added team. And all the extra management of running the team falls on your shoulders. And you keep going. And you may add more team, you may take more orders, you get extra capacity. If you're not careful, what happens? This natural flow will build. And as it builds, what we end up with is this. And simplistically, we won't call it crudely, bullshit points to the owner, because everything is focused on you. You as the owner have become the big bottleneck in your business. So looking at this as a full slide, it looks something like this. This is what we need to do. This is the cycle of business. And what we need to do is we need the owner to look after the team to look after the customers will then look after the business by placing the orders, and the business will look back after the owner. Then it becomes scalable. But it's so easy to get caught into this trap because it's the natural way that a business will evolve. So that's the first thing to look out for, is how actually are we running this? Are you, the owner, getting dragged into conversations with the customers, doing the accounts work, all this extra sort of work that could actually be given to somebody else? That's the first stage to look at. Now, another way to look at this is, as soon as you add team members into your business, you've progressed from being the business manager, because you're managing you and the customers and the accounts and the business organisation, to actually having to lead and drive and engage a team. So you've got the leadership skills you need to take on. So what's the difference? These are quite often a common question. And the way I simplistically put it is this. A manager's job is to organise. So a manager will be told to make so many widgets, and the materials are over there. They go and organise the people to get the materials, to make the widgets, get them packed up, built to the right standard, inspected, packed, shipped, out the door. They're downward looking, is the way that I would describe it. In the business, they're downward looking. Really required, do a great job, but they're downward looking. The leader, on the other hand, is upward and outward looking. They're looking at the big picture. They're looking at local latest legislation. They're looking at what's happening outside the business. And they're looking for opportunities, because they are the one who are going to come up with the ideas to implement in the business, which obviously would then quite possibly will become the manager's requirement to actually work on those. So we've got the manager and transition to the leader position that you naturally get drawn into. So next exercise we're going to look at is this. What do you physically do in the business? Now, we're going to do a quick sort of 30-second exercise on this, but this is what you need to do this accurately. And although it sounds trivial and silly, actually, whenever I do it for me and whenever I do it for my clients, or they do it and we analyze what they're doing, the reality is they end up doing things they never realized, they never questioned, is probably the best way, why they do it. So here's the exercise. For 2 weeks, just record everything you do and do it in half-hour blocks, everything that you do for that 2-week period, and record it. So if you were doing invoicing for half an hour, you write half an hour invoicing. You were doing manufacturing for an hour, manufacturing for an hour, and you block all these out. When you've actually done that exercise and you've got 2 weeks of data, then simplest way is usually get something like a highlighter pen, go over that and highlight. So everything that's production is one color, everything that's sales is another, everything marketing, another, everything that finance is another. You break it down and work out how many hours you're spending in each discipline. Now, in order to give you some sort of idea on this, let's now think about what you do. Just write down things that you get involved in, especially the oddball things that you get involved in doing your day-to-day job. Quick exercise. Okay. So now you've got a list of things that you think you do. Just look at those. What is it you could, or actually should, you delegate? So let me give you the first story. I'm running a workshop and it's on time management. And we go through in depth analysing everything that people are doing, and we're working out the efficiencies in the business. And client I've been working with for a few years is in the room and he's doing this as an exercise, and he's done it kind of before, but now we sort of, you go through a different approach and you pick up different things. And he comes to me afterwards and he says, Dave, I've got to tell you that this is a multi-million pound business. He says, I've realised I've got to stop opening the post. So this guy, every morning, one of the jobs he did was to open the post. Now, you can pay somebody on minimum wage to open the post, clearly. And you have a laugh about it, but now think about it this way. What's the psychology for opening the post? And he'd worked with his father, so these things have been handed down. And the reality is, if you go back 20 years, opening the post, you had lots of checks. So the business owner liked to collect, oh, I've got that order, I've got that order. It was part of the mechanics of the business. It didn't need to be, but it actually gave you a heads up on how well things were going. So all of a sudden, this kind of gets indoctrinated into the, well, that's just the way we do it. That's my job. But the reality is today, if you're like most businesses, the times you get a check can probably be counted on one hand over a year, if that. So there's no reward for opening the post, but more importantly, there's no need for you to open the post because most of it's probably junk mail. So that's the learning. If somebody from a several £1 million turnover business can be into that trap, then whatever size your business is, you can get caught in the same thing. And we'll come up with a number of stories on that as we go through. So moving back to the presentation, what could you delegate? Now, why should we implement change is often the next thing. Well, you know, I quite like opening a post. I like doing this, that, and the other. The biggest struggle that people have is to understand the benefits of offloading work as the owner and getting your team to do it. So they're obvious in that we've got them listed here. Reduces your working hours, gives you more time. You get time to actually just sit and watch what is going on. And although that sounds trivial and a waste of time, actually you'll spot more things you can improve, and your cost effectivity in the business will be really improved as a step change just by doing that as an activity. The flip to this, though, is by offloading more to your team, what you actually do is you give them more responsibility and you give them more job satisfaction. So now you've upskilled your team, you've got a team which is more satisfied in what they're doing and less likely to leave, which is the other side of it. And you're then able to sit back and see what everybody's doing to work out the best way to improve the business and take it up to the next notch, which equates to make more profits. So that's the underlying thing of the simple changes we need to make. So why don't we make it? The reality is it's all up here, between your ears. It's all in the way that we've gone through schooling and our upbringing. And classic thing, school, upbringing, common thing to be told, I was told, was work hard, you get rewarded. Work hard, you must work hard, you get the rewards if you work hard. Go through school, you've got to work hard, you've got to get this result. You'll get rewarded when you actually have these results. You go out to the big wide world, work hard to get there. So you just naturally tend to work hard. The problem is, in a business, if you've got a problem comes up, and the de facto way of doing anything when you get a problem is call the manager, get told what to do. But you come in as manager and you fly in to get the problem solved, you rush round, everybody stands back from you, think, oh, he's running around, he's fixing it, and waits for the dust to settle, and then you say, right, you do this, you do that, and then they're off. Because up until that point, history is left for them to understand you want to solve the problems. And if I'm harsh on this, you like the idea of putting your Superman cape on, rushing in, solving everything, rushing out. Makes you feel you've done a good day's work, that you've gone in and solved the problems for everybody else. But at some point, you'll reach the point where you think, oh, for goodness sake, why are they asking me? Why can't they just do it themselves? And if you haven't spotted the link here, because you've not told them they can solve it themselves. You've not explained to them. You've not said to them, I said, well, can you come and fix this, Dave? Well, what do you think you should do? Some of the great retorts you can give when somebody says, oh, can you do this for me? Well, what do you think we should do? Get them to answer the question. Yeah, right, great. Well, just go and do it then. You don't have to do that many times before they start thinking, oh, well, every time I go and ask Dave what to do, he asks me what I think I should do and then tells me to go and do it. Now, you have to set some limits. But that is the underlying thing, the mindset. So let's look at how we get into this situation. And this is what we call the iceberg identity. And it's like an iceberg. 9/10 of it is below the sea, below the water level, and you can't see what's going on. So at the deepest depths is your identity, what you're born with. You're born with an identity based on your parents. And from that identity, you then have an upbringing, which, in generally speaking, your parents will induct you with values, things which are important to you. From those values, as you go through life, you will learn things and you will pick up beliefs, Now, belief is an interesting word. Not truths, beliefs. So you will believe something is true. It's not actually true until you prove it's true, but you believe it. This kind of becomes a mind block, a wall that you build up. So, simple analogy. In the UK, we don't very often get really icy roads. So the belief generally in the UK is that to drive when it's icy is really, really dangerous. If you go to Scandinavia or Canada or somewhere like that, where they drive on ice for so many months of the year, I don't think it's dangerous. They just have the right equipment and they just drive. It's just something they learn to do when they learn to drive a car. So our belief that it's dangerous to drive on ice is a Canadian's or a Scandinavian's, well, we just put the right tyres on and we just drive. It's winter driving. So the beliefs can be changed by education. And at the top level is the skill set. So this is the main side that we work on with our team in business. Teaching them new skills, which actually will help them modify, if they've got any contradictory beliefs, will help them to change in their own mind and prove some beliefs are untrue. So they will then re-educate themselves. So generally speaking, we are working with the skills, developing with our team new skills, and that will reflect in their beliefs. The values and identities are in the psychology, and they're way beyond what we'd normally be working in the business. That's the psychologist's expertise. So the other things here, what we're actually seeing of that person is what's above the waterline. In this slide here, you can see their actions, their behaviours and their decisions. That's what we're judging them on. But that's all being reflected by their skill level, their beliefs, their values and their identity. The only other thing which has a huge impact on a person is their environment. So if they mix with certain people, if they mix with successful entrepreneurs, undoubtedly they're going to have the mindset, well, you can do that because I know that such and such does it and, you know, we can get great results. If you have a drinking group at the pub and you've got your little group and they all kind of think of yourselves as being on par and you're a business owner and they're all doing day jobs, and you say, oh, I'm really thinking about doing this and see if I get some more money because I really fancy that nice car. Although they won't see it this way, they see all of you at the same parity. And the last thing they want is you to be suddenly stepping up to here and they're down here still. So actually, anything that they don't see themselves doing, they would say is bad news. And they'd be the first ones to tell you, oh no, I wouldn't do that, that's dodgy. So the people, the environment that you actually immerse yourself in, that's highly important in the way that shapes your mind and your way that you're going to treat delegating to others. One of the other stories I'll give you is coming back to in a business. We have this fear because we've been indoctrinated through our education and our upbringing about must work hard. We have this fear as being seen by a team as not working hard. Because what we feel is that if we work hard, the team will see what we're doing and think, oh yeah, Dave does a great job. He's always rushing around working. In reality, what your team are probably thinking is, why don't you just let me get on with it? So we're fighting an internal pre-programmed belief that we have to work hard. We have to be seen to be working hard. But that will make us jump in and actually railroad our team on the route. So here's the story. Working with a pub group. And when I first started working, they just had a single pub restaurant. And it was husband and wife business. They've got young children. And the guy was working over 100 hours a week, and his wife with 2 young children was working 60 plus hours a week. And I said, we can't keep doing this. We cannot take the stress. So we're just looking at ways that we can, the exercise I've just told you about there was one of the exercises we started looking at. And I was actually in the pub, and his team were working around, and he suddenly gets a call from one of his team members. We've run out of lager. Up he jumps, disappears down the cellar. 3 or 4 minutes later, comes back. What's all that about? I had to change the barrel. The barrel had run out. Ah, right. So why are you doing that and not your team members? Well, I'm so much quicker than anybody else, and I can just get things done really, really quickly. So we're 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There's 4 other people in the pub, and you're worried about how much time your team might spend learning how to change a beer barrel. And you can see the penny drops. 6 weeks later, he's working less than 60 hours a week. Because he's analysing what he's doing and he's getting rid of the surplus. The work level comes down, he becomes more efficient, more on the ball. Everybody else gains. Because your team members don't want to see you running around in circles. They want to see you getting everything ready for them, all the materials, everything else, ready for them to do their job. Because if they can do the whole of their job, they feel far better about it. So let's look a little bit more at that side of things. Get back to the presentation. So we need to stop showing everyone how busy we are. And what we're going to look at now is if you let your team run things, you get the fear factor coming with that. So the most common thing is, what if I train my team to do more? They leave. To which the retort is, well, if you don't train them to do more and become more useful to you, they stay. So do you want an untrained, unskilled, marginally useful group of people, or do you want a highly skilled, highly useful set of people who will outgrow your business in a few years and probably move on? And the reality is a top performing team member will outperform the average person by something like 3 to 1. They'll be 3 times more effective than your ordinary team member. So even though a single team member will always be able to outstrip in their education and learning the business growth, actually they will benefit you on their way through. And they may even come back to you in a few years after they've got experience elsewhere, because you've given them a great development stage in their life and their career. So keeping your team happy has great benefits. And if we go back to 1943, when a guy called Maslow came up with his hierarchy of needs, and these pop up all over the place. But this is his triangle of needs. And what he says is this: the basic human needs start with the psychological. And you need to have food and you need to have warmth, because if you don't have that, you're going to die. So food, shelter and warmth are the primary things you need. Then we move up to the next level and say, well, okay, so now we're staying alive from one day to the next. The next thing is we need to have safety. So are we going to get attacked by other tribes or animals or whatever? So we need to be safe. Then we need to belong. Now, the expression in this particular one is love, relationship, but actually, in a company basis, belonging as part of the group of the company, you belong to that culture of that company, is very engaging. That's one of the key things that people look for when they go and work somewhere. What that then lets you generate is esteem from your standing within your colleagues within that group, your company. But the biggest thing is self-actualization. The biggest warm feeling you get is actually to be given a task and said, right, Dave, just go and do this, get it all sorted out, go and get on with it. And you've got using your own initiative and you're working it out as you go along, and you come up, you solve the problem, and you finish on that task. And you stand back and say, I did that. That is self-actualization. And that is the ultimate thing within a team environment of how you get your team engaged. And then you'll start to run them at top performance. And when they're performing at their top level, that's when they're most profitable for you. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, say 1943 came up with that, still totally relevant in this day and age. Now, the next fear is that if you get your team members to do things, how do you know if they're doing them or they're just sloping off going to read the paper or something? And the main thing you need to do there is you need to have key performance numbers. So numbers which say what they're actually doing, so as you can monitor it without looking over their shoulder. As soon as you look over their shoulder, they kind of feel you're micromanaging, because you are, and their job satisfaction drops. So what you need to do is to task them, say, right, okay, your job for this week is to produce 5 of these widgets. Their counter then is how many widgets did they produce? Did they produce 5? Did they produce 6? Do they get recognition for producing 6? Do they get a discussion, let's leave it at that, if they only produce 4? Because they could have a perfectly valid reason. But that's your monitoring. This is how you can monitor your team remotely. So more detail on that, you'd obviously got the things like the finances, the business, and all this sort of thing would come into that. And we call it a dashboard because it's like when you're driving the car. You don't take an awful lot of notice of things, but lights are come on when it's not working right. That's what you need with your dashboard in your business. So key performance indicators, that's what lets you control what's going on and know that it's running effectively. So that's the next major key in delegation, is once you've given it to somebody else, you need to know that they're doing it. And in summary then, delegation equals growth. No delegation means the business owner generally is the bottleneck, because he's key to everything, he's getting involved in everything, and that's what's causing the problem. So that's the real thing for me, is you've got to delegate. And so in close, let me give you one last story. I'm working with this guy who does warehouse equipment. And nice little business, ticks along. And we'd done all this thing about delegation. And I said to him, look, you really need to give the work, all the day-to-day stuff, as much as you possibly can. He had a team of about 15 people, to your team, because then you can sit back and see what's going on. And we've been discussing this, and he'd been putting off and reasons why he couldn't do it. And oh, yes. So we reached a point and said, right, okay, this week, this is it. The one assignment task we're setting you for this week is you need to clear your desk, turn the phone off, and sit there for the day. And I want you to just observe what's going on around you. And he said, yeah, okay, Dave, I kind of understand, and I've got the gist. You give me all the theory and the reasons. I'll go and see what I can do. So he comes back the following session and said, how'd you get on? And his hands, his knuckles are gripped to the table. And he says, Dave, I did what you said. And I went in, cleared the desk, and I just sat and watched what was going on. And he said, you know what? There were some funny things. I went, well, why are they doing it that way? Why don't they do it? So he says, I made a note of those. But he said, I have to be honest, it was really, I just felt so guilty. But I forced myself, and I stayed there till lunchtime. And lunchtime, I just thought, I can't do this anymore. So I went out and swept the car park. And that is a perfectly true story, is That is what you're fighting. You don't realize you are, but that's what you're fighting up here. You have to actually physically take control and force yourself to do things differently. So that's it for today. I hope that's useful to you. We'd love to see your feedback and your comments and any suggestions for future webinars. Let me know how you get on. I wish you all the luck and fantastic growth in your business. I'm David Betts, business coach working in Colchester. All the best.